right, before we go, Chris, you may have noticed this on your cell phone device, or maybe you did not. In Cincinnati, the effort to trade Andy Dalton has concluded in a failure to trade him. He has been released by the Bengals, which it's not a surprise, not a shock at all. Joe Burrow is their guy. The Bengals avoid $17 million in cash obligation to Dalton, and he's on the market now. He's available. Would it have been better to be available earlier? Probably, just like with Cam Newton in Carolina. But he's free and clear. He'll be available. And now, just like with Cam Newton, just like with Joe Flacco, we got to figure out where the hell these guys are going to land for 2020, if anywhere.
Well, the first thing I think of with Andy Dalton is to reunite with Jay Gruden, who drafted him. And Jay Gruden's the offensive coordinator in Jacksonville right now. And, we know they have Gardner Minshew, but he's still a little bit of a question mark and an unproven commodity, to where that might be a place I would look. There's a veteran guy that knows the offense. And if Gardner Minshew, craps down his leg, as for lack of a better word,
or craps the bed, or does both at the same time.
Or pees the bed, whatever it may be, then you have a guy like Andy Dalton to come in and save the day. But, I do think Andy Dalton, is going to find a home, to me, quicker than a Cam Newton, because he's not as threatening as Cam Newton. Again, like we've talked about, Cam Newton's the type of guy that's players are going to walk off the field and go, damn, why isn't he our starter? He's special. Andy Dalton's not necessarily going to have that effect.
Yeah, I agree with you. And he's not going to walk through the door with expectations to compete to be the starter. It's going to cost less to get him. And look, he's not that. This is where it's a curse to be as good as Cam Newton is, right? If Andy Dalton was as good as Cam Newton, he'd have a hard time finding another job too. Of course, he wouldn't have been cut possibly by the Bengals, and they wouldn't have taken Joe Burrow because they wouldn't have been holding the first pick in the draft because they wouldn't have stunk last year. Anyway, I'm thinking of any connection I possibly can. Marvin Lewis currently isn't in the league. He was the head coach when Andy Dalton was drafted, so it's not like Marvin Lewis could sign him. Mike Zimmer was the defensive coordinator in Cincinnati for the first few years of Andy Dalton's tenure. Their backup to Kirk Cousins is Sean Mannion. It's a different offensive philosophy altogether, but I'd kind of like Andy Dalton as a different set of eyes and ears for Kirk Cousins. Not as a guy who you would expect to play, but just as a guy who can help Cousins, maybe see things he doesn't see, understand defensive concepts, and elevate his game mentally. Do you see any merit to that?
I do. I definitely do. And I think his skill set fits that offense there too. So that makes a lot of sense. My mind also went right away to the Los Angeles Rams. He's going to fit what they do there, having just played under Zach Taylor's offense. He'll know that. He could be a very good backup for Jared Goff. And then again, I'm going to go back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers view themselves as a team that's a Super Bowl contender. Do we want to take the chance of Big Ben getting hurt again and going down the same road we did last year to have to invent offenses and win games with your defense on a weekly basis? So right off the bat, with a guy like Andy Dalton, I think of the teams who are in, wow, we have a team right now that can compete. If we lose our quarterback, can we still compete? And I think there's a few out there that I would say no, and Andy Dalton certainly can bolster those chances if you got him on your roster.
And Andy Dalton ultimately had 5 straight playoff appearances as the starting quarterback of the Bengals. They have fallen on hard times since then. They never won a playoff game under Andy Dalton, but still, he was not a horrible quarterback. And I'm reminded of a comment that was made in the media back before Dalton was drafted out of TCU in the second round in 2011. An unnamed coach asked a member of the media back before the draft, has there ever been a redheaded quarterback in the NFL who's really done well? It sounds idiotic, but is there any way that could be a factor? We've wondered that. So, Andy Dalton has done pretty well for himself despite the color of his hair, but that just shows you how ridiculous this process can ultimately be. How about a couple of other possibilities? Houston Texans, who have A.J. McCarron as the backup. Kansas City Chiefs with Chad Henne as the backup. Tennessee Titans, Logan Woodside is number 2 to Ryan Tannehill there.
Definitely. I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the Tennessee Titan ones for sure. I look at that and go, that makes sense. That's smart. I think there's going to be a big market for them because I think there's too many of these teams who have underwhelming quarterback situations where this guy's going to be able to help So, I think those are a few good ones that I would look at right off the bat. Let alone, I'm even the Dallas Cowboys. I'm thinking about Andy Dalton. Yeah, and I'm trying to think of somebody else. I was going to say Atlanta Falcons. I would. I don't know what their deal is with Matt Schaub or what they're trying to do, but that would be another team again that I feel like he could go in and run that offense. And if the quarterback did get hurt, they're not going to fall off too much.
How about Blaine Gabbert as the backup to Tom Brady in Tampa Bay?
Well, he's certainly going to make you feel more comfortable, right? I mean, Gabbert has done an okay job as a backup, but yes, he's not Andy Dalton. Yeah, like you said, Mike, we've kind of disrespected Andy Dalton. He's had a better career than, we want to all give him credit for. It's just he's not like a cream of the crop type quarterback. I think he's one of those guys that if he's your starter, you always go, he's good, but we're looking out of the corner of our eye right now for somebody better. That's the kind of guy he is. So, and I saw Pete Dimalitolitis. He texted us the Seattle Seahawks. That's a good thought too. I still thought Geno Smith was under contract up there, but that would make sense if not the Andy Dalton to go up there, so their season's not ruined if Russell Wilson had a high ankle sprain or something like that.
Yeah, currently the depth chart on the Seattle Seahawks roster at quarterback is one, Russell Wilson. That's it. So they need somebody at some point. And hey, maybe they were just waiting for Andy Dalton. I mean, look, we all knew this was going to happen. They weren't going to be able to trade that salary. They're not going to pay part of the salary. The Bengals aren't going to do that to try to get a late-round draft pick next year. They're going to cut him. They will. And now we see where he lands next. But I'm with you. He's going to land somewhere before Cam Newton because he's not a starter. He doesn't have to wait for that opportunity. He'll be someone's backup, and he should probably do fairly well.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.